Hello, everyone. So, this is a screenshot from one of Angry Birds' friends' recent tournaments, the Back to Ham High tournament. It's pretty interesting, but what I mostly want to focus on is the bottom left corner. That right there? That's algebra. I saw that and immediately struck me as odd. The target audience for this game is obviously young kids. Kids who most likely wouldn't be in high school to begin with, and thus wouldn't really understand how to do this sort of thing. Obviously, I know how to do it, and I definitely didn't cheat on it using Desmos or anything, because why would I do that? But still. It's kind of weird that something like that would be there. It's not like it's required to beat the level or anything, but it's still kind of a weird addition to put there. And like I mentioned before, something this target demographic for this game wouldn't understand. Which means this was put here for the lore. If you think about it, if the original Back to School was in 2012, and that was supposedly the Pig's first year of school, technically speaking, that would put them in about kindergarten-ish. Well, 12 years later, this year, or 1998, if Back to School takes place in 1996, according to my timeline, that would mean that this would be their senior year of high school. In other words, confirming my theory that Angry Birds Friends takes place relatively across the timeline and not in one specific fixed point. Oh, I guess it doesn't directly confirm it, but still, it definitely supports it. Anyway, speaking of Angry Birds Friends, let's talk about Ruby. Okay, so a little while ago, Rovio revealed that Ruby from Angry Birds Seasons completely got redesigned. And this is actually a fan redesign by Crema Draws, which apparently got official. Which I really like that and is absolutely a step in the right direction. But there's one small problem, and don't worry, it's only a problem for me and not for the franchise as a whole. It's that, Ruby is now Red's sister. And if you've seen my timeline videos, you know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because I theorized that the Angry Birds are like the resurrected version of an extinct species of bird after this war made them go extinct. Just go watch my timeline videos, you'll understand. Hopefully. But Ruby being a biological sister to Red throws a massive monkey wrench in that entire timeline, and for a while there was just no way I could connect this all together to make the timeline work. And for a while I thought that Angry Birds was unsolvable. Until Rovio posted this. A fact sheet about the newly redesigned Ruby. Akin to the ones seen in the Angry Birds magazines of yesteryear. For the most part, it's mostly stuff we already know and nothing too important for me. Except for the what's going on in Ruby's brain section, where it's revealed Ruby is also known as Girlbird. Okay, I'm just kidding. I'm always like about the 71.3% of the brain part, where it states that the previous mission was to find Piggy Island, and that the new mission was to protect eggs from the pigs. Okay, that's huge. So, this seems to imply that Red and Ruby were born on two separate islands. But which islands could they be? Well, take a look at Ruby's design here. One thing that immediately sticks out to me as someone who theorized about the franchise theorizes about this franchise and overanalyzes every single detail is the fact that this Ruby has two tail feathers. If you know anything about Angry Birds, it's that this is almost always a sign of youth within the franchise. But some things don't seem to line up with it. However, a long time ago, the franchise did give an explanation for this. In the National Geographic Angry Birds Space book, it is a really good book, by the way. It's pretty much just basics about space books with Angry Birds Space thrown on there for marketing purposes, but it does give one page about the stars. It gives an interesting look at Angry Birds lore, in which the Blues react to this little astrofact here, saying that bashing pigs keeps them young. And suddenly, everything fits together. The Blues, Bubbles, Luca, Silver, they're all young birds, and they both have two tail feathers. Again, makes sense. And then there's Icebird. He also has two tail feathers, which is kind of weird if he's supposedly like an ancient multiverse bird. But if we consider he's been beating up bad guys across the multiverse for who knows how long, that would definitely be a way to help him keep a fairly young look on him. That or time dilation, but let's keep it consistent here. But then there's two birds here that don't make a lot of sense. Melody and Joe. And no, I haven't talked about Joe a lot. This is the part when I do it. So, these two are kind of awkward, right? They're recently introduced, and they seem to break this rule that Angry Birds seems to have. Unless we know that from my timeline, Melody is from the ancient bird civilization and has been fighting the pigs for, again, who knows how long. That would definitely be able to keep the two tail feathers on her, but what about Joe? Well, according to this random fact sheet, I apologize for the low quality, by the way. I honestly couldn't find a better quality image of this anywhere that worked with Google Slides for some reason. But anyway, it states that their BFF is Melody. It also states around here that their personality involves, like, only hang out with a specific group of people. So, with all that being said, is it possible both Melody and Joe are from that ancient bird civilization? Furthermore, this is about to sound a bit random here, could Melody and Joe be the parents of Red and Ruby? I think maybe. Because, well, first of all, it'd be kind of hard for someone to be biologically born without parents, and these are the only two potential candidates in the entire franchise, so, unless maybe Mighty Eagle, but I kind of doubt that. Look at the flock, you'll notice that a lot of them notice that they seem to already have their powers at born. Well, the Blues and Terrence technically don't have powers, but you know what I mean. However, Red always needs some sort of extra boost when they're given the power, like Red's mighty feathers, for example. Or even Angry Birds Space. Now, here's where things get interesting, Because in this game, Red does actually gain a new power. It's very small, and you're likely to not notice it or even know about it at all at first. But if you tap on the screen, Red sends out a shockwave that makes pigs jump up just a little bit. It's not a huge power, but it's definitely a noticeable upgrade nonetheless, once you realize it. However, flash forward to Angry Birds 2, which I theorize to be the next game in the franchise, and Red has himself a true power. A seemingly upgraded version of that shockwave power from Angry Birds Space. Almost as though that cosmic radiation gave Red the extra boost he needs to gain his power later in life. Now, obviously, with that being said, we don't know Ruby's power, but we could go the Super Y route and say her power is to help. So, there's something. Okay, but anyway, tail feathers. We can clearly see that Red has 3, and again, Ruby has 2. This seems to imply that Red was born during a time where he could properly grow up without having to worry about fighting, while Ruby was born into the middle of a war. And to my knowledge, there was only one time there was ever a peace prior to the Pig War, at least the current one. That being when the Stella flock was first created. Is it possible they were created specifically so Red could have friends when he grew up? But if that were the case, Red would most likely have to be on Golden Island and... Oh, shut up! Anyway, as I was saying, if that were the case, Red would have to be born on Golden Island, but there's no evidence for that anywhere in the series, is there? Actually, there is. In the Angry Birds Stella episode, The Prankster, we see that the prankster's Poppy does to Stella is cover her in a bunch of red feathers. Seemingly from a Red who grew up there and was molting. Which actually pretty gross now to think about it, but I mean, what better evidence do we have, you know? Anyway, speaking of which, Red growing up would most likely mean he needs his own flock to hang out with. And well, the Stella flock would definitely aid in creating the rest of the classic flock. Where Red would set sail for Piggy Island, finally, as evidenced by the slingshot boat seen right there. At first I thought it was just a cool little detail in reference to the movie, but now, with this under context, that makes a whole lot more sense, and also seems to imply that Stella and Reloaded take place at around the same time. An idea I thought of, but never really followed through with it. But looking at all this new evidence for the early stages of the timeline now, I think it makes a whole lot of sense. Anyway, as we all know, Red would eventually have to go to space in the Reloaded space update. Meaning there'd be no one, well, there'd be one bird to protect the eggs, that being Matilda, but for the most part, the flock would pretty much be completely gone. Thankfully, however, Melanie and Joe would have another child, that being Ruby. She would gain her own flock, and, well, they would all be the next bunch of birds on Reloaded and stuff, so. Anyway, it's at this point that the rest of the timeline occurs. Which we pretty much know for a fact at this point what the rest of it is. Except now we know that Ruby is involved with it as well, and ends up getting left behind, presumably on Golden Island. And somehow managed to avoid capture all these years. That is, until eventually, in Angry Birds Friends, when Ruby finally finds the flock again, along with her long-lost brother. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. Now, I probably could have just asked Krima about what's the actual lore behind all this. But that would require rewriting my entire timeline, and I honestly really do not feel like doing that right now, so... I think what I came up with on my own is pretty good. So, that being said, thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, you know what to do, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye!